This week I've been driving the 2024 Mazda CX-50 Meridian Edition. This is one of 8 available trim levels in the Mazda CX-50, and it's the soft rotor trim, as you can tell by the all-terrain tires and the roof rack. We have a set of 225/60 R18-inch Falcon Wild Peak AT Trail tires, which is a fantastic all-terrain. I actually ran them on my lifted BRZ for quite a while this summer. As you can see, this is painted in zircon sand metallic, which is an excellent color for the CX-50. The CX-50 is a little bit wider than the Mazda CX-5 and a little bit more spacious inside. A bit longer too. We have a pretty nice all-wheel drive system that is well suited to on-road and off-road driving. This can tow 3,500 pounds, and it's a turbocharged 2.5-liter inline 4-cylinder that makes 227 horsepower, 310 pound-feet of torque on 87 octane, and around 250 horsepower, 320 pound-feet of torque on 91 octane. But let's be honest, everyone who drives this is going to be putting 87 in it. Let's hop inside, we'll start it up, and we'll talk about this car. This costs about $44,000. We have the terracotta interior, no heated steering wheel, we get heated seats, and we get the base 8-speaker audio system. Top tip with the Mazda CX-50, or I guess most Mazdas these days, put your seatbelt on before you start it up. Otherwise, you're going to listen to this. It's the most incessant, annoying startup chime in the business, but there is an easy workaround, and that is just put your seatbelt on. It trains you to do that very quickly in this Mazda CX-50. We have CarPlay, which is wireless. Integration has worked really well this week. Nice wide-angle, modern-looking display. Physical controls, kind of a blend between digital and analog gauges here, and just a very attractive-looking interior. Still not entirely convinced on this stitching. It's a little bit King Ranch edition for me, and doesn't really suit the character of this car that much. But overall, the materials in here feel nice. They feel about right for the price point, which is getting up there these days. $44,000 or just shy of for this Meridian. It's about the same as a premium Mazda CX-50 with a 2.5 turbo. You're going to be sacrificing a few luxuries for this off-road trim. I would really like to see a Bose sound system in this. I would really like to see a heated steering wheel, but you can get those in other trims, just not in this Meridian, unfortunately. Some of the basics out of the way. Let's see what back seat space looks like. Oops, we gotta unlock all of our doors. Reasonably spacious back here. Super easy to get in and out of. I'm 5'10". This is my driving position. I have lots of room to put my feet under the front seat. I had my son's, which is now a forward-facing car seat, in here earlier this week, and it was pretty easy to get him in and out. Fortunately, these doors open at almost a 90-degree angle, which is very useful for extracting offspring from the back of your vehicle. We have 2 USB ports back here. There's your armrest. Headrests are nice and adjustable. A little bit less headroom back here than I would want, but I'm 5'10" and I have about an inch above my head. Power operated tailgate. And the nice thing about zircon sand metallic is this car is already a little bit dirty, a little bit dusty. You can't tell because it's the color of the dust of the earth. Compact spare tire back there. Lots of room behind this second row. That is kind of the big win with this CX-50, is this is a pretty spacious cargo area, storage area. You can fold down both these seats and you've got a lot of space. Those fold flat, but our front seats are a little bit far back for that. Really nice wide opening here. Yeah, as a vehicle to put things and stuff in, I think this would do the job. I like these fenders. I like that we have 18-inch tires on this. I wish some of the higher trims came with smaller wheels, to be honest. You can see how flat those seats fold. There you go. We're not going to force it down. You guys get the idea. What about these roof rails? Well, they seem pretty solid. I don't know what you would put up here, but it is an option. This is a max weight of 119 pounds, which isn't a ton of capacity, but if you want to put things on top of your Mazda CX-50 and experience a ton of wind noise on the highway, there you go. We also have a pretty incessant sunroof rattle today in this car. That's something I've experienced in another Mazda CX-50 before, but from the look of it on forums, it seems to be somewhat of a common issue with this panoramic sunroof. Here's our 2.5 turbo. Made it to a 6-speed automatic. Great drivetrain, shifts well, it's responsive, reasonably fuel efficient with a 25 mile per gallon combined rating, 23 in the city, 29 on the highway. Should average about 28, 29 miles a gallon cruising on the highway in this thing. It's a nice engine, pulls well, good power. And again, I don't really know if we're running it on premium or regular this week, since the press company doesn't tell us what they fill it up with. So we're just gonna kind of drive it and see how it feels. Really the only area where I feel like materials aren't up to snuff is the door pull. It's just hard plastic, kind of scratchy. Everywhere else though, everything you touch, steering wheel, shifter, armrests, it's all nice and soft and feels pretty good. Got some good storage in this CX-50 for sunglasses. The visors don't slide, but there's a little pull out that does. We're going to close this sunroof area. Pretty much all you see is a roof rack. We have 3 different drive modes: sport, normal, and off-road. And they're pretty descriptive. Off-road is kind of this do-it-all off-road mode. It'll work well at higher speeds. It'll work well for crawling situations, low-speed technical terrain. The car's computer, it figures it all out. The G-vectoring control, the active all-wheel drive system kind of works in harmony to really create a nice off-roading experience. Check out our initial trail drive in the CX-50 if you want to see this off-roading some. Granted, that was not a Meridian edition, but this would do even better because it has the proper tires on it now. And sport just kind of makes this a little bit more fun to drive, which is always a welcome thing in a Mazda. Here's what our reverse camera looks like. Tiny little view, but nice high resolution display. Would be nice if it fit the screen a little bit better, but I can see what I need to. No 360 cam in this Meridian edition. You probably got to swing up to a higher trim level for that. All right, let's go for a drive. See what this is like and give you guys some driving impressions. Oh, one big improvement with the Mazda CX-50, since I drove one last, at least for 2024, is the steering is much lighter now. So one of my only complaints, honestly, with the CX-50 before was the steering was just overly heavy. It took a bit too much effort. The control weight didn't match anything else in the vehicle, and this feels about right. Suspension has been softened slightly too, but that's less of a difference. It still has pretty good feedback for a crossover, and it's a lot less taxing to drive and to use and to wheel around town. These all-terrains really have no concessions. They handle great. They have good grip in the dry and the wet. I've spent some time driving on these in my BRZ in the snow, and they perform admirably there too. They're quiet on the highway. They wear well. It's a nice tire. Honestly, if I were recommending an all-terrain tire for any crossover, this would be at the top of the list. This and probably the Yokohama Geolandar Geo15 are the 2 top choices in the category, and it's nice to see a really high quality set of tires on this CX-50 Meridian from the factory. Infotainment takes a little bit of getting used to. You kind of develop some muscle memory with how many clicks it takes to access certain things, and you do have some quick access buttons here for home, music, navigation, and once you live with this Mazda infotainment a little bit, you actually get used to it, and I kind of prefer it to some other options in the segment. Got got a flashing red here, but we're gonna wait. We also get I-Stop, which is stop-start. It works fine, but again, something I've usually been turning off whenever I drive this CX-50. Great power here from that turbocharged 2.5 liter. You can start to hear the wind noise from those roof rails, and there's a few rattles creeping up. We've had some pretty big temperature swings here in southeast Michigan this week, so some of that could be attributed to that, but this is a bit more rattly of a car than I would prefer overall this week, in my experience. Great power merging onto the highway. The nice thing about a 6-speed automatic transmission is that you don't have a ton of gears to hunt through, and this engine has the torque to take it through the revs. Honestly, I would do without the roof rails. Without those, this would be a pretty quiet and serene highway driving experience. Cruise control is super easy to operate. You can skip 5-mile-an-hour increments. You can change your following distance easily. It's a decent system in this Mazda CX-50. It works well enough. It's just easy to use these buttons, which is what I like about it the most. We have a few different info displays here in this kind of circular digital gauge cluster. We can choose between a digital speedo readout with our driving assistance. That'll show us what's in our blind spots too, which is useful. Or just a traditional kind of analog gauge there with our fuel economy. With mostly city driving this week, I've averaged about 20 miles to the gallon in this CX-50. All right, let's put us into sport mode and see how this handles. You really do notice a difference between normal and sport and how this behaves turning into a corner. That active G vectoring control really does a good job. What it does is it breaks an inside wheel to just help you turn in just a little bit tighter, a little bit sharper than you would normally. It does a good job. It's convincing. The gearbox tuning, again, like a lot of Mazdas, is excellent. Paddle shifters are responsive. They shift right when you want them to. Again, this isn't a crossover trying to be a sports car. You should get a Miata for that. But it is reasonably fun to drive compared to everything else in the segment. This and the Mazda CX-5 both share that and kind of lead the category in my opinion. Let's go back into normal. No change in ride quality between different drive modes, of course, because this just has passive dampers. You start to hear that rattle from the back, creeping back out. Throttle tuning is pretty pleasant too. No complaints there. Sometimes in these turbocharged Mazdas, I've experienced a little bit too much throttle aggression on initial tip-in, where it just feels like the slightest amount of throttle will really kind of get you up to speed a lot faster than you want. That's not the case here in the CX-50. It seems to be pretty linear, which is nice. One note about the audio system, if I were getting a Mazda CX-50, I would be sure to get a Premium or a Premium Plus just so I could get the Bose. You could always get a set of 18-inch wheels and all-terrain tires later on, and I'd skip the roof rack. Which kind of leads me to, is the Meridian trim really worth it? I don't know if it is. It looks cool, it's got a cool factor going for it, but I wish Mazda would at least offer the availability or the option to spec this with the Bose. So that may change in future model years, but right now I don't know if I could live with this 8-speaker standard audio system. We'll give you guys a little taste here. Virtually no bass. It's pretty hollow, not very clear. You really have to crank up the volume to be able to hear the music, which is interesting because the Bose in this car is fantastic. So I would just try to get that if you can. Well, because this is the Meridian trim and it's got some off-road chops, we have to take this off-road. So this is my kind of local dirt road test route. Let's see how it does and see if we can get through some of these potholes and little mud puddles. A little bit of noise there from the suspension. Ride quality is nice though. We've got some bigger bumps right here. Should be about 8 inches of ground clearance here, give or take a little bit. It'll get you off the beaten path. It's pretty comfortable doing it. I will say the all-wheel drive system and the traction control here is very well tuned to off-road driving. Your limitations are just going to be ground clearance, approach, and departure angle. But these tires, very capable, very well suited to mud driving, snow, sand, and again, excellent road manners as well, which is great. You would be surprised at what this can actually tackle. It's quite capable. And what's amazing is just the breadth of capability here from this car. It can tackle a back road, it can kind of be engaging and fun and exciting on a twisty 2-lane. It seems to do pretty well on the highway as a comfortable cruiser. The road manners here are excellent, and it still has some off-road chops. Cool. All right, guys. Well, that's pretty much everything I have to say about the Mazda CX-50 Meridian Edition. Let me know if you guys have any questions in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Closer look at that hood graphic. Intended to reduce reflections, of course, as you're driving through the sunny backcountry. Gotta pay attention to where I'm walking here. Plastic fender surrounds too, so we don't get too scratched up. I wish they would give us just a little bit more ground clearance, maybe slightly revised suspension, some skid plating underneath. This could be a pretty capable crossover, but you can always do that stuff in the aftermarket too. And from the factory, it already does a pretty good job.